The Night Comes For Us is an Indonesian action martial arts crime thriller film. This movie is only on Netflix. I had to get Netflix to watch this movie. Not just for this movie, but this movie stars Joe Taslim as one of the 6 C's. He is an enforcer for the Triad. There's 6 of them. They're like 6 mini drug lords that are responsible for, you know, rounding up drugs and prostitution and all that stuff. And the opening scene, his men massacre a village, a little fishing village, and he decides to betray them to rescue a little girl. And he goes back to his ex-girlfriend's apartment, and she contacts some of his old gang members, and he wants out of the Triads, but they're going to want to get retribution for what he's done. So first off, I want to say that this movie is super violent and gory. I loved it. But after the first half, the movie gets a little bit overly violent, and I feel like the movie indulges itself a little too much. You know, I enjoy a violent, gory movie, but sometimes a movie gets too gory and violent. Also, this movie has wonderful direction and fight scenes. The action is great. It's not too much cutting away, lots of hard-hitting choreography. I quite enjoyed all of the scenes with Joe Taslim fighting people. Other than that, though, other than the direction, the gore, and the fight scenes, the movie's trash. I mean, that in the sense that there's barely any story. I mean, not just the main character, but all of the characters in this movie have very weak motivation. For example, him wanting to save this girl, she doesn't really have any, she's more of a MacGuffin than a girl, really. She's not even a character. She doesn't barely say anything in the movie. They don't really like imply why he wanted to save her, but he felt like if he saved this little girl, maybe he can save his own redemption. And it comes off very cheesy and heavy-handed if that's what his goal was. You know, they could have at least, you know, made her like a rival, the daughter of a rival gang or something, and he decided, you know, he's going to stop the line of killing children or something like that. But the movie doesn't go for that emotional complexity. It's more interested in, you know, blades and bullets flying at people. And then everyone else's motivation is also super weak. One of the antagonists is played by Iko Uwais. He wants to become one of the 6 C's, but he's conflicted because these are his old friends. And then the Triads want to kill a fishing village because some of the village members stole from them. So therefore they have to kill everyone, including the girl that escaped, to make an example. And they send all these waves of men and guns and resources just to, you know, get the message across. It comes off as overly cartoonish. And then the movie also introduces, the main character's name is Ito. Ito's ex-gang. They're not even characters either. They're introduced to helping them out. They get attacked. And their action sequence was awful. It was like one of the most cheesy, over-the-top things I've ever seen in a movie. Essentially, Ito goes to find an old acquaintance to get money so that he can leave the country with the girl. And then bad guys show up at his ex-girlfriend's house, and, you know, that the girl's there and all of his friends. And there's a scene where they kill a guy who's got a machine gun. And then they go over to the door, and there's like 20 guys with knives trying to get in. So you'd think that the first thing they do is grab that machine gun and use it on the guys. They don't do that. It's a messy, over-the-top, like, incompetence is like the goal of all the characters. There's a scene where a guy picks up a Uzi and he shoots at 2 guys that are standing in front of him and he misses, and then they stab him. And I'm just like I thought these were supposed to be like ex-gang members. How are they so shitty? How are they so awful at fighting? Like, isn't it common sense to, like, you know, kill all the people in the room? You pick up the guns first. You don't be like, oh, well, I'm going to fight them one-on-one with knives. So I mentioned earlier that all of the Joe Taslim's fight scenes are great, but his friends fighting, awful. There's also another character they introduce. Her name is the Operative. She's played by Estelle, also known as Hammer Girl from Raid 2. She kind of just, it feels really random. She shows up and she basically wants to kill all of the heads of the 6 C's, but he doesn't want to be a 6 C's member anymore. So she's all like, okay, I'll watch the girl for you if you kill someone or something. See, even she has an awful motivation. But she gets a pretty sweet fight scene with some assassins. And it just seemed kind of like random because she was like by herself and she's really good at everything. And she doesn't really impact the plot very much. Overall, though, the movie is action-packed. It has like at least 5 or 6 awesome action sequences. I noticed that all of the action sequences in the second half are not as good as the first half, though. There's a fight scene in which Ito goes to a warehouse and he's fighting too many guys, and there are scenes where he'll break a guy's leg and he'll pause and he'll just leave himself wide open, and then someone will slash him across the back or something, and he doesn't protect his own self. It just feels really over the top and kind of unrealistic that he'd fight in a style that just lets him just pause for a little bit and get hurt. And he takes like 4 or 5 baseball bat hits to the back, and then you got the assassins versus the operative, and she's really good. That was a pretty good fight scene. And then there's the final battle between his ex-friend, which was just over the top, and the ending's not even satisfying either. The movie originally was going to be done as a screenplay, but then it was going to be turned into a comic book, and then they finally made it into a movie. The movie has a lot of style, a lot of great direction, action, gore, music, all that stuff. Acting is okay too. Just too much style, not enough substance. The story's not even there, you know? Basically, he wants to walk away from this dangerous life, so he decides to do something really inept, and then he's trying to save this girl, but he gets everyone killed because they suck at fighting, and they shouldn't. And then there's this operative lady chick, and she doesn't barely do anything either, and then there's no real resolution. The movie feels really sloppy in terms of story. There's no motivation for any of the characters, even though the action sequences are great. The movie itself is very slipshod in terms of everything else. So I give The Night Comes for Us a 4 out of 10.